If you fell into the Western Interior Seaway 80 million years ago, the first thing you'd notice is how normal it feels. The water is warm, shallow in places, almost peaceful from the surface. No crashing waves, no immediate violence, just a vast inland sea stretching across the middle of North America, green water fading to grey beneath you, then disappearing completely. And somewhere below that fading light, something has already seen you. That was the real horror of this ocean. Not that it held monsters, but that it held too many of them. Every layer of water was occupied. Hunters below hunters. Predators moving through a food chain so crowded, so competitive, that even the apex predators were surrounded by other things capable of killing them. So the question was never what lived here. The question was, what found you first? The Western Interior Seaway was not a small ocean. Around 85 million years ago, it split North America in half. A vast inland sea stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean, nearly 600 miles wide in places. To the east lay Appalachia. To the west, Laramidia. Between them sat a warm, shallow sea, unlike anything on Earth today. And that warmth mattered. Shallow water let sunlight reach deep into the ecosystem. Plankton bloomed in enormous quantities. Fish multiplied, predators followed. In ecological terms, the Western Interior Seaway was an engine, converting sunlight into biological mass at a scale that fed some of the largest marine predators ever produced. For roughly 25 million years, this sea became one of the most densely populated marine hunting grounds in Earth's history. And when food is everywhere, predators don't stay small. They grow. Everything that lived in this water, every shark, reptile, fish, and sea monster you're about to see, was a product of that simple equation. A warm ocean, an endless food supply, and millions of years of competition with nothing slowing the arms race down. Before the giants came into view, the water was already dangerous. Some of the most common predators in the Western Interior Seaway were animals that weren't especially large, but they were everywhere. One of them was Squalicorax falcatus, the crow shark. Around 16 feet or 5 meters long, armed with serrated cutting teeth built for slicing flesh. It hunted fish and marine reptiles, but the fossil record shows something else as well. Squalicorax teeth embedded in dinosaur bones. When animals washed into the sea, the crow sharks arrived. Predator when the opportunity appeared, scavenger when it didn't. And there were a lot of them. Sharks shed thousands of teeth over a lifetime, and the seaway sediments are packed with them. The abundance of Squalicorax fossils suggests these sharks were among the most common hunters in the entire ecosystem. Anywhere something bled in the water, they were likely already nearby. Other sharks specialized differently. Tychodus reached lengths approaching 33 feet or 10 meters, but its teeth weren't built for slicing. They were broad and flat, arranged like pavement stones, tools for crushing. Its prey was armored, ammonites, clams, shelled animals that other predators ignored. While crow sharks tore flesh, Tychodus cracked open the seaway's hard-shelled biomass. Different weapons, different prey, but they were only part of the danger, because even smaller predators were everywhere in this ocean. One of the most common fish in the entire seaway was Encodus, often nicknamed the saber-toothed herring. It was only 3.2 to 4.9 feet, or 1 to 1.5 meters long, but its jaws carried oversized fangs, long recurved spikes designed to seize prey and never let it go. Anything caught between those teeth wasn't escaping. Enchodus hunted smaller fish and invertebrates, but it also lived a dangerous life itself. Larger sharks ate it. Giant fish ate it. Marine reptiles swallowed them by the hundreds. It was both predator and prey, a constant moving link in the food chain, which meant something important. If the smaller hunters in this ocean already looked like this, then the things hunting them were going to be much worse. And those are the animals that come next. Elasmosaurus platyurus solved a problem most marine predators never bothered with: how to feed without being detected until the moment of contact. Its neck measured about 7 meters, within a total body length of 10 to 14 meters, meaning nearly half the animal was neck. That neck contained 72 vertebrae, more than any other known vertebrate. At the end sat a small, narrow head lined with interlocking needle-like teeth designed for gripping fish rather than crushing prey. The skull itself wasn't a weapon. It was a delivery system. The hunting strategy relied on geometry. Large predators moving toward fish schools create pressure waves in the water that fish detect through their lateral line system, allowing them to escape before the predator arrives. Elasmosaurus had the same problem, but its anatomy partially bypassed it. The body generated the pressure wave, but the head extended 7 meters ahead of it, reaching into undisturbed water before the disturbance arrived. By the time the fish sensed the approaching body, the jaws were already among them. The neck likely didn't strike forward like a spear. The vertebrae suggest limited vertical flexibility, but good lateral movement, meaning the animal probably maneuvered its head slowly into fish schools rather than lunging. The attack was positional rather than explosive. Gastroliths, swallowed stones, have been recovered from several plesiosaur fossils, including elasmosaurids. Their purpose remains debated: ballast for buoyancy control, digestive aids, or accidental ingestion. The stones are real. Their function remains uncertain. One historical mistake added unnecessary confusion. When Edward Drinker Cope first reconstructed Elasmosaurus in 1868, he mistakenly placed the skull on the tail. The error was later corrected by Othniel Charles Marsh during their already famous rivalry. The neck was always on the other end. The fossil was unambiguous about this. The animal it belonged to was already strange enough without the additional confusion. The most famous Xiphactinus specimen didn't die from predation, disease, or injury. It died from lunch. Xiphactinus audax was a predatory fish reaching up to 6 meters in length, roughly the size of a modern great white shark. Its body was streamlined and powerful, with a deeply forked tail built for sustained speed. Unlike ambush predators, Xiphactinus was a pursuit hunter, chasing prey through open water and closing distance faster than most fish could maintain. Its jaws completed the design. Large, lined with fang-like teeth projecting from the front of the mouth, they weren't built for slicing like Squalicorax or crushing like Tychodus. They were built to seize and hold. Xiphactinus didn't tear prey apart, it swallowed animals whole. One famous specimen recovered by George Sternberg in 1952, now displayed in Kansas, preserved a 1.8-meter fish called Gillicus inside the body cavity of a 4.2-meter Xiphactinus. The prey was intact, swallowed headfirst in a single attempt. The likely explanation is simple. The fish was too large to pass through the digestive system. The mechanical stress of containing something that size caused internal trauma, killing the predator before the meal could be processed. In the fossil record, it's one of the clearest examples of an animal dying because its appetite exceeded its limits. Ecologically, Xiphactinus occupied the contested middle of the seaway's food chain. It consumed encodus, smaller fish, and juvenile marine reptiles, converting that biomass into the energy that attracted larger predators. And those predators noticed. Mosasaur's stomach contents and bite-marked Xiphactinus fossils show it was prey as often as it was a hunter. Fast enough to chase most things below it, not fast enough to matter to most things above it. Hesperornis regalis made a decision its lineage would refine for millions of years, the same one modern penguins eventually arrived at independently. Flight was less useful than swimming. The result was a 1.5 to 1.8 meter flightless bird with legs set far back on the body, the configuration that maximizes propulsion in water while making movement on land awkward and slow. On shore, Hesperornis was vulnerable. In the water, powerful hind limb strokes drove it through the seaway with efficiency, while its reduced wings did nothing to slow it down. Then there were the teeth. Unlike modern birds, Hesperornis retained rows of small, sharp teeth along the jaws, ideal for gripping slippery fish during underwater pursuit. In this context, the design made sense. A smooth beak loses struggling prey. Teeth hold it. But diving for fish in the Western Interior Seaway meant entering one of the most dangerous marine ecosystems ever assembled. Below the surface lived Squalicorax, Xiphactinus, mosasaurs, and Elasmosaurus, predators for which a 1.8 meter bird was perfectly acceptable prey. Every dive carried risk. The fish it needed to survive were down there, but so was everything that could kill it. The fossil record confirms the outcome in at least some cases. Mosasaur's stomach contents have preserved Hesperornis remains. The bird dove. The mosasaur was waiting. What likely kept Hesperornis viable was behavior rather than anatomy, feeding in shallower water, targeting fish near the surface, and diving where larger predators had less advantage. It survived in this ecosystem for millions of years, which means the calculation worked often enough. But the margin for error was always small. The Seaway made sure of that. Archelon ischiros was the largest turtle that ever lived. That fact is not in dispute. What the fossil record quietly complicates is the assumption that size and armor together should have made it untouchable. Total length reached about 4.6 meters, longer than a standard car with a flipper span approaching 5 meters. Weight estimates sit around 2,200 kilograms. The shell was not the solid keratinous dome of a modern tortoise, but a leathery framework-supported structure, a lattice of bony struts covered with thick skin rather than the fused scutes smaller turtles carry. The result was lighter than a solid shell of equivalent size, which mattered for an animal that needed to move through open water rather than sit on a riverbank. The trade-off was structural. A leathery framework shell is not as mechanically resistant as solid bone. It provided meaningful protection against most predators in the seaway. The serrated teeth of Squalicorax, the gripping fangs of Xiphactinus, and the needle dentition of Elasmosaurus. Against those animals, Archelon's size and shell covering made successful attacks unlikely. Mosasaurus was not most predators. The crushing bite force of Mosasaurus hoffmanii was capable of processing heavily armored prey. Bite-marked archelon material exists in the fossil record, positioned on shell and flipper bones in ways suggesting predation rather than scavenging. The defensive logic that worked against most predators had an upper limit. That limit was the largest mosasaurs, animals capable of defeating armor that stopped everything else. There is also a behavioral factor. Like modern sea turtles, archelon likely spent time near the surface, breathing and recovering from dives. A 4.6-meter turtle silhouetted against the surface light would have been visible from considerable distance below, allowing a mosasaur to approach from beneath and target the softer underside beyond the shell's protection. Archelon survived in this ecosystem for millions of years. The strategy worked at the population level, but population survival and individual safety are different things. In the Western Interior Seaway, they were never the same. Tylosaurus proriger enters the documentary at the point where the scale of threat in this ecosystem requires a different category of description. Not because it was the largest animal in the seaway. That distinction belongs to what comes next. But because Tylosaurus represented something specific in the mosasaur family. A predator built for active pursuit in open water with a dietary range broad enough to include other apex predators. Length estimates for the largest specimens reach 12 to 14 meters. The body was elongated and streamlined relative to other large mosasaurs, less massively built through the trunk, more hydrodynamically efficient, with a laterally compressed tail built for sustained speed. Where some mosasaurs specialized in ambush and crushing force, Tylosaurus was built for chase. The skull carried a distinctive feature, a pronounced rostral extension, a bony projection at the tip of the snout extending beyond the tooth rows. It has been interpreted as a possible ram, used to stun or disorient prey before the jaws engaged. Direct proof remains uncertain, but the structure sits exactly where a pursuit predator would deliver such an impact. Dietary evidence reframes its ecological position most clearly. Stomach contents and associated fossils show prey ranging across the seaway's inhabitants. Fish, such as Encodus and Xiphectinus, marine birds like Hesperornis, plesiosaurs, and even other mosasaurs. A predator that hunts other apex predators is not filling a normal niche. It sits above the apex tier with little pressure from below. No clear fossil evidence suggests anything regularly hunted adult Tylosaurus. The closest ecological rival was Mosasaurus hoffmanii, not a predator of Tylosaurus, but another giant operating at similar scale and competing for the same prey. Two predators that size don't need to hunt each other to create conflict. Competition for food alone creates constant pressure beneath the surface. What happened when they did meet directly is a question the fossil record has yet to answer. Mosasaurus hoffmanii is the animal this ecosystem was building toward. Not chronologically, mosasaurs as a family appeared and diversified across the seaway without a neat progression toward Mosasaurus specifically. But ecologically, in the sense that the arms race described earlier has a final expression, Mosasaurus hoffmanii is what that expression looks like. The largest confirmed mosasaur, the apex of the apex, sitting at the very top of a food chain that had been escalating for millions of years. Length estimates for the largest specimens reach around 17 meters, with some analyses pushing toward 56 feet. The body was massively built through the trunk, not the streamlined pursuit design of Tylosaurus, but a heavily muscled frame optimized for crushing force rather than sustained chase speed. Mosasaurus didn't need long pursuits. It only needed proximity. What happened at proximity was determined by the jaws. The jaw mechanics formed the center of its dominance. The teeth were robust and conical, designed for penetrating and crushing rather than slicing or gripping. Behind them sat the pterygoid teeth, a second set on the palate that prevented prey from escaping once seized. When the mouth closed, the mechanical options available to whatever was inside it reduced immediately to zero. The skull itself was kinetic. Flexible joints within the bones allowed the jaws to expand and manipulate large prey during swallowing. The skull was not a rigid structure, but a dynamic one, adjusting to manage prey of different sizes. Bite-marked fossils linked to Mosasaurus include shark vertebrae, turtle shell fragments consistent with Archelon, and plesiosaur remains. The pattern is clear. Mosasaurus was not a specialist. It ate what the seaway provided, at whatever size the seaway provided it. One specimen from South Dakota even preserved mosasaur remains inside a Mosasaurus body cavity. Whether this represents predation or scavenging is uncertain, but the implication is clear. Even other mosasaurs were within its feeding range. That expands the ecological picture dramatically. An apex predator capable of consuming members of its own family places predation pressure across nearly every tier of the ecosystem. From Encodus at the small end, to Archelon at the armored end, to other mosasaurs at the competitive end, the dietary range effectively encompassed the entire seaway. Mosasaurus hoffmanii did not dominate by being the fastest or the most specialized predator. It dominated by being large enough and mechanically capable enough that nothing in the seaway presented a feeding problem it couldn't solve. That is a simpler form of dominance than most apex predators achieve. It is also the most complete. The water was the danger. That was the assumption for anything living near the Western Interior Seaway. Stay out of the water, stay alive. The predators of the seaway were a known threat, confined to a defined boundary. The shoreline was supposed to be the margin of safety. Deinosuchus was the shoreline becoming a second killing floor. Deinosuchus hatcheri was a giant crocodiliform living along the coastal margins of the Western Interior Seaway during the late Cretaceous, roughly 82 to 73 million years ago. The largest individuals reached 10 to 12 meters in length. The skull alone extended to about 1.8 meters, longer than most adult humans are tall. The bite force is the number that reframes everything else in this documentary. Estimates reach around 100,000 newtons, derived from biomechanical modeling of the skull and jaw musculature. For comparison, Tyrannosaurus rex is estimated between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons, while the strongest modern sharks reach around 18,000 newtons. From the water's edge, Deinosuchus generated bite force exceeding the most powerful predators in the sea beside it. The teeth reflected that function. The front teeth were pointed for seizing prey, while the rear teeth were blunt and rounded for crushing bone. The design allowed it to capture large animals and then apply catastrophic pressure once the jaws closed. Bite-marked bones attributed to Deinosuchus include hadrosaur remains, large herbivorous dinosaurs that came to the shoreline to drink or feed on coastal vegetation. The marks show deep, rounded impressions consistent with the crushing rear teeth, sometimes repeated along the bone, suggesting the prey was being processed rather than simply killed. Deinosuchus was not ambushing small animals. It was taking prey the size of large cattle from a shoreline those animals had no choice but to approach. Its relationship with the seaway's marine predators is unclear. Their ranges overlapped along the same coastal margins. Whether Mosasaurus and Deinosuchus ever directly engaged is unknown, but the size and bite force comparison suggests that if they did, the outcome would not have been predetermined by the ocean's usual hierarchy. The shoreline was where the rules of the water stopped applying cleanly. For animals living along the seaway's edge, survival became a narrowing problem. The interior land offered safety. The coastal vegetation offered food and water. But reaching it meant approaching the margin, and the margin was where Deinosuchus waited. Behind it was the sea. There was no safe direction. The ecosystem had closed all of them.